The dust kicked up around Clara Kerrigan's worn boots as Deputy Marshal William Garrett grabbed her arm outside the mercantile, his voice loud enough to draw every eye on Main Street in Rhyolite, Nevada, this scorching August afternoon in 1885. She felt her cheeks burn hotter than the desert sun beating down on them, both as he announced that she was under arrest for the debts her late husband Thomas had left behind. Debts she had no knowledge of, until this very moment when her world came crashing down around her like a house built on sand. Clara tried to pull away, her heart hammering against her ribs as townspeople gathered to watch her humiliation unfold. "There must be some mistake," she said, her voice trembling despite her efforts to sound calm and composed. "My husband died 6 months ago. I have been working at the boarding house trying to make ends meet. I do not understand what debts you are talking about." Deputy Garrett's face showed no mercy as he pulled a crumpled paper from his vest pocket. $573 owed to the bank, madam. Your husband took out a loan 2 years ago and never made a single payment. The bank has been patient, but they want their money now or they will take your property. Since you cannot pay, I am authorized to take you into custody until arrangements can be made. The world spun around Clara as she tried to comprehend the astronomical sum. $573 might as well have been $5,000. She made $12 a month at the boarding house, barely enough to keep herself fed and clothed. Thomas had told her they were doing fine, that his work at the silver mine brought in enough for them to live comfortably. He had lied about so many things, and apparently this was just one more secret he had taken to his grave. "Please," Clara whispered, hating the desperation in her own voice. "I have nowhere to go. I did not even know about this debt. How can I be responsible for something my husband did without my knowledge?" "The law is the law, Mrs. Kerrigan," Deputy Garrett said, though his grip on her arm loosened slightly. "The debt passes to the surviving spouse." "I am sorry, but I have my orders." A tall figure emerged from the crowd then, moving with the confident stride of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. Clara had seen him around town a few times over the past month, always keeping to himself, always watching everything with those sharp gray eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He was a cowboy by the look of him, with sun-weathered skin and calloused hands, probably in his late 20s, wearing dusty trail clothes and a wide-brimmed hat that had seen better days. "How much did you say the debt was?" the stranger asked, his voice deep and steady. Deputy Garrett turned to face him, his expression wary. "This is not your concern, mister. Move along." "I asked how much the debt was," the cowboy repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I heard you say the amount, but I want to make sure I have it right." $573, the deputy said slowly. "And who might you be?" "Name is Nathan Zeller," the cowboy said, reaching into his saddlebag which was slung over his shoulder. "I have been working cattle drives for the past 10 years, saving every penny. Just came back from a drive up to Wyoming. Made good money on it." Clara stared at him in disbelief as he pulled out a leather pouch that clinked heavily with the sound of gold coins. Her mouth went dry as she watched him count out the money right there on the dusty street, his fingers moving with practiced precision as he stacked gold eagles and silver dollars in the deputy's outstretched hands. "That is 500, Nathan said, then added more coins. 550. 570. 573. Count it if you want, but it is all there." Deputy Garrett's jaw had dropped open. He carefully counted the money twice, then looked up at Nathan with confusion written all over his face. "You are just going to pay off this woman's debt. You do not even know her." "I know enough," Nathan said quietly. "I know she works hard at the boarding house where I have been staying. I know she lost her husband and has been trying to survive on her own. I know she does not deserve to be arrested for debts she did not make. Now release her." The deputy looked between Nathan and Clara, then slowly released his grip on her arm. "The debt is paid in full," he announced to the gathered crowd. "Mrs. Kerrigan is free to go." He tipped his hat to Clara, tucked the money into his bag, and walked away toward the bank to deliver the payment. Clara stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. This stranger had just paid an enormous sum of money to save her from arrest, from losing everything. She turned to face him properly for the first time, really seeing him now. Nathan Zeller was handsome in a rugged way, with a strong jaw and those penetrating gray eyes that seemed to look right into her soul. His dark hair was shaggy and in need of a cut, and a few days' worth of stubble covered his face. He looked tired, like a man who had been riding hard for a long time. "Why would you do that?" Clara finally managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. "That was your life savings. You do not even know me." Nathan shrugged, but there was something in his eyes that made her heart skip a beat. Money can always be earned again, but watching an innocent woman be arrested for something that was not her fault, that does not sit right with me. I have spent too many years watching people get trampled by those with power and money. Figured I could do something good with what I have earned. Clara felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. No one had shown her such kindness in longer than she could remember. Thomas had been cold and distant in the months before his death, and she had been so alone since he passed. "I will pay you back," she said firmly, though she had no idea how she would ever manage such a thing. "Every penny, I swear it." "We can talk about that later," Nathan said gently. "Right now, how about I walk you home? You look like you have had enough excitement for one day." The crowd was dispersing now that the show was over, people returning to their business with whispers and sidelong glances at Clara and her mysterious benefactor. Clara nodded, not trusting her voice to speak without breaking. Nathan offered his arm and she took it, grateful for the solid support as her legs felt like they might give out at any moment. They walked in silence for a few minutes, Nathan adjusting his pace to match hers as they headed down the dusty street toward the small house on the edge of town that Clara called home. It was not much, just 2 rooms and a kitchen, but it was hers and she had worked hard to keep it after Thomas died. "I truly cannot believe you did that," Clara said finally as they turned onto the quieter side street. $573. That is more money than I will see in years." "It is just money," Nathan said, though Clara could hear the slight strain in his voice that suggested it was not quite as easy as he made it sound. "I have been living rough for so long, sleeping under the stars and eating beans out of a can." "Money does not mean much when you have no one to share it with and nowhere to call home." Clara looked up at him curiously. "You have been drifting for a long time." 10 years, Nathan confirmed. "Left home when I was 18 after my parents died of fever. Did not see much point in staying in a place that held nothing but sad memories. So I hired on with a cattle outfit and just kept moving. Seen most of the West by now. Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Texas. Worked ranches and cattle drives, saved what I could and kept moving." "That sounds lonely," Clara said softly. Nathan was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "It is. More than I like to admit. Been thinking lately that maybe it is time to stop running and find a place to settle down. Problem is, I do not know where that place might be or what I would do with myself if I stopped moving." They reached Clara's house, and she reluctantly released his arm, immediately missing the warmth and strength of him beside her. "Would you like to come in for some coffee?" she asked, surprising herself with the boldness of the invitation. "It is the least I can do after what you have done for me." Nathan smiled, and it transformed his entire face from weathered and guarded to genuinely warm. I would like that very much, Mrs. Kerrigan. Please call me Clara, she said, unlocking the door and pushing it open. After what you did today, I think we can dispense with formalities. The inside of the house was simple but clean, with handmade curtains on the windows and a few precious photographs on the mantel. Clara moved to the stove and began preparing coffee, her hands shaking slightly as the reality of what had almost happened finally caught up with her. She had been about to be arrested, thrown in jail, possibly lose her home. And this stranger had saved her without a moment's hesitation. I need to know why, she said, keeping her back to him as she worked. The real reason. Men do not just give away their life savings to women they barely know without some kind of expectation or ulterior motive. She heard Nathan settle into one of the wooden chairs at her small table. You are right to be suspicious, he said honestly. But I promise you, I have no ulterior motives. I have been staying at the boarding house for the past month, working odd jobs around town while I figure out what to do next. I have seen you there every day, working from dawn until late at night, always polite, always kind even when you are clearly exhausted. I heard some of the other women talking about your husband passing and how hard things have been for you. And today, when I saw that deputy grabbing you and announcing your private business to the whole town, something just snapped inside me. I could not stand by and watch it happen. Clara turned to face him, coffee pot in hand. But $573, Nathan. That is not a small amount. You could have bought land with that money, started your own ranch, built a real life for yourself. Or I could help someone who needed it more than I do, Nathan countered. Clara, I have been empty for a long time, working, saving, drifting, but never really living. Today, when I made that decision to help you, it was the first time in 10 years that I felt like I was doing something that actually mattered. Like I was being the kind of man my father raised me to be before he died. The coffee began to boil and Clara poured 2 cups, carrying them to the table and sitting across from Nathan. She studied his face in the better light inside the house, seeing the honesty in his eyes, the weariness that came from years of hard living, but also something else. A kindness that ran deep, a fundamental decency that her late husband had never possessed. Thomas was not a good man, Clara said quietly, staring into her coffee cup. I did not realize how bad things were until after he died and I started discovering all his secrets. The debt you paid off today is just one of many lies. He gambled away money we could not afford to lose. He drank too much. He was cruel with his words when he had been drinking. I stayed because I thought it was my duty, because I had made vows before God. But I cannot say I mourned him when he died in that mine collapse, and that makes me feel like a terrible person. Nathan reached across the table and gently covered her hand with his own. The touch sent a jolt through Clara's entire body. That does not make you terrible, he said firmly. That makes you human. You cannot force yourself to mourn someone who treated you badly, and from what you have told me, he did not deserve your loyalty. Tears finally spilled down Clara's cheeks and she did not try to stop them. I have been so alone, she whispered. So scared. I barely make enough to feed myself. The boarding house work is all I have, and if Mrs. Henderson decides she does not need me anymore, I have nothing. Today, when that deputy grabbed me, all I could think was that this was it. This was the moment I had been dreading, when everything finally fell apart and I lost even the little I had managed to hold on to. Nathan stood and moved around the table, crouching beside her chair so he could look up into her face. You are not alone anymore, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I know we barely know each other, but I meant what I said out there. I want to help. Let me. Clara looked down at him, this stranger who had become something more in the span of an hour. Why? She asked again. Please, Nathan. I need to understand. He was quiet for a long moment, then said, "Because when I looked at you today, really looked at you, I saw someone worth saving. Someone who has been through hell but kept going anyway. Someone who works hard and stays kind even when life has been nothing but cruel. And maybe because somewhere deep down, I saw a chance for something I have been missing for a very long time. A purpose. A reason to finally stop running." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Clara reached out and touched his face, feeling the rough stubble under her palm, seeing the way his eyes closed at her touch. "You barely know me," she said, but there was no conviction in the words. "Then let me get to know you," Nathan said, opening his eyes and meeting her gaze. "Let me stay in Rhyolite for a while. Let me court you properly if you are willing. No expectations, no pressure. Just a chance to see if this feeling I have, this sense that meeting you today was meant to happen, has any truth to it." Clara's heart was racing now, hope and fear warring inside her chest. It was too soon after Thomas's death for anything serious, or at least that was what society would say. But society had not been there during those long, lonely months. Society had not seen the bruises Thomas had left on her arms, the way he had made her feel small and worthless. Society had not saved her today. Nathan had. "I would like that," Clara said softly. "I would like that very much." Nathan smiled that transformative smile again and rose to his feet, though he kept her hand in his. "Then that is what we will do. For now, though, I should probably let you rest. You have had a difficult day." Clara walked him to the door, reluctant to let him leave but knowing he was right. She needed time to process everything that had happened, to let her racing heart slow down and her scrambled thoughts settle. At the doorway, Nathan turned back to her. "I will come by tomorrow," he said, "if that is all right with you. Maybe I could walk you to the boarding house before you start work." "I would like that," Clara said again, feeling like a silly schoolgirl but not caring. "Thank you, Nathan, for everything." He tipped his hat to her and walked away down the dusty street, his long stride eating up the distance. Clara watched him go, then closed the door and leaned against it, her hand pressed to her chest where her heart was still pounding. What had just happened? How had her worst day turned into something that felt like the beginning of something wonderful? That night, Clara lay awake in her small bed, staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment of her encounter with Nathan Zeller. The way he had stepped out of the crowd without hesitation. The weight of those gold coins as he counted them out. The gentle touch of his hand on hers. The honesty in his eyes when he told her he wanted to stay and court her properly. She had given up on happiness after marrying Thomas. Had resigned herself to a life of loneliness and hard work, of surviving rather than living. But today, a stranger had shown her that maybe there was more to life than just getting by. Maybe there was still a chance for joy, for love, for all the things she had stopped believing she deserved. The next morning, Clara rose early and dressed with more care than usual, choosing her best day dress and pinning her dark hair up in a neat bun. She told herself she was being foolish, that Nathan would probably have second thoughts in the light of day and realize he had made a terrible mistake. But when she opened her door to leave for work, she found him standing there waiting for her, looking freshly shaved and wearing clean clothes, a small bouquet of wildflowers in his hand. "Good morning," he said, offering her the flowers with a slightly shy smile. "I hope I am not too early." Clara accepted the flowers, breathing in their sweet scent. "You are right on time," she said, unable to keep the happiness from her voice. "Let me just put these in water and then we can go." They walked to the boarding house together, talking easily about small things. Nathan told her about some of the places he had seen during his years of drifting, painting vivid pictures of mountains and plains and wide open skies. Clara found herself telling him about her childhood in Kansas, about the family she had left behind when she married Thomas and moved west, about the dreams she had once had of adventure and romance that had died somewhere along the way. "Why did you marry him?" Nathan asked carefully as they neared the boarding house. "If that is not too personal a question," Clara sighed. "Because I was young and naive, and he was charming when he wanted to be. He told me we would have a grand adventure out west, that he would strike it rich in the silver mines and we would live like royalty. My parents tried to warn me, but I would not listen. I thought I knew better. I thought I was in love. We all make mistakes when we are young," Nathan said quietly. "The important thing is that we learn from them." Mrs. Henderson, the stern but fair woman who ran the boarding house, gave Nathan a curious look when she saw him walking with Clara, but she did not say anything beyond a polite greeting. Clara went about her work cleaning rooms and preparing breakfast for the guests, very aware that Nathan had taken up a spot in the common room where he could see her as she moved about her duties. It felt strange having someone watch over her, but not in a bad way. Thomas had never shown the slightest interest in her work, had never even asked about her day. But Nathan's attention felt different, protective rather than controlling, interested rather than possessive. During her brief break for lunch, Nathan invited her to sit with him on the front porch of the boarding house. He had brought sandwiches from the local restaurant, and they ate together in companionable silence for a while before Nathan spoke. "I found some work," he said. "The livery stable needs help, and old Mr. Peterson at the general store says he could use someone to help with deliveries and heavy lifting. Between the two jobs, I should be able to make enough to pay for my room and board here and start saving again." "You do not have to stay on my account," Clara said, though her heart leapt at the thought of him remaining in Rhyolite. "I meant what I said about paying you back, Nathan. I will find a way." Nathan shook his head firmly. "I am not staying just because of the money I paid for your debt, though I do hope you will let me continue seeing you. I am staying because for the first time in 10 years, I feel like I have found a place where I might want to put down roots. This town feels right. And yes, a big part of that is you, but it is more than that. I am tired of drifting, Clara. I want to build something real." Clara felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. "I would be lying if I said I was not happy you are staying," she admitted. "You have given me something I had not felt in a very long time. Hope." Over the following weeks, Nathan became a constant presence in Clara's life. He walked her to and from work every day, often bringing small gifts like wildflowers or a sweet from the bakery. They spent their evenings together when she finished work, sometimes just sitting on her porch talking until the stars came out, other times taking walks around the edge of town, where the desert stretched out endlessly under the vast Nevada sky. Nathan proved to be everything Thomas had not been. He was patient and kind, always asking about her day and genuinely listening to her answers. He made her laugh with stories from his years on the trail. He treated her with a respect that made her feel valued and seen in a way she never had before. But it was more than just kindness that drew Clara to Nathan. There was an intensity to him, a quiet strength that made her feel safe. When he looked at her, she felt beautiful for the first time in years. When he touched her hand as they walked, even that simple contact sent shivers through her entire body. She found herself thinking about him constantly, counting the hours until she would see him again. One evening about 6 weeks after Nathan had paid her debt, they were sitting on her porch watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of orange and gold. Nathan had been quieter than usual, seeming to struggle with something he wanted to say. Finally, he turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Clara, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice serious. These past weeks with you have been the happiest of my life. I wake up every morning excited to see you. I go to sleep every night thinking about you. When I am working at the livery or making deliveries, I find myself planning what I want to talk to you about later. You have become the center of my world, and I do not want to hide how I feel anymore." Clara's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. "Nathan," she whispered, but he gently squeezed her hands. "Let me finish," he said. "I know it has not been very long. I know some people in town probably think I am moving too fast or that you should wait longer after Thomas's death, but I do not care what other people think. I am falling in love with you, Clara. Maybe I have been since the moment I first saw you working at the boarding house, always kind to everyone even when you looked dead on your feet. I want to spend my life with you. I want to build a home with you, a real home, not just a place to sleep but somewhere that is ours. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want children with you if you want them too. I want everything with you." Tears were streaming down Clara's face now, but they were happy tears. "I love you too," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "I did not think I could ever feel this way about someone. After Thomas, I thought I was broken, that I would never be able to trust anyone again. But you have shown me what real love looks like. You have made me believe in happiness again." Nathan pulled her close and kissed her, and Clara felt like she was coming home. His lips were gentle but passionate, conveying everything words could not express. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back with all the love and desire she had been holding inside for weeks. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said softly. "I know it is fast, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Marry me, Clara. Let me spend the rest of my life making you happy." "Yes," Clara said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married a month later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Rhyolite. Clara wore a new dress that Nathan had insisted on buying for her, a beautiful blue cotton that made her eyes shine. Nathan wore his best clothes, his dark hair neatly trimmed for the occasion. Mrs. Henderson and some of the other women from the boarding house attended, along with the men Nathan had befriended while working in town. Deputy Garrett even showed up, looking slightly embarrassed but sincere as he wished them well. "I am glad things worked out for you, Mrs. Kerrigan," he said after the ceremony. "Or I guess it is Mrs. Zeller now. You deserve some happiness after everything you have been through." After the wedding, Nathan carried Clara over the threshold of the small house that was now officially theirs together. He had been fixing it up in the weeks before the wedding, repairing the roof and patching holes in the walls, making it sturdy and weatherproof. It was not much, but it was theirs, and that made it perfect. That night, as they lay together in the darkness, Clara felt a contentment she had never known before. Nathan held her close, his strong arms wrapped around her protectively, and she felt completely safe for the first time in longer than she could remember. "Are you happy?" Nathan whispered into her hair. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Clara answered honestly. "You saved me, Nathan, not just from that debt but from a life of loneliness and fear. You gave me back my hope." "You saved me too," Nathan said, kissing the top of her head. "I was lost before I found you, just drifting through life without any real purpose. But you gave me a reason to stop running. You gave me a home." The months that followed were the happiest of Clara's life. Nathan's work at the livery stable and general store brought in steady income, and Clara continued working at the boarding house for a while, until Nathan gently suggested she might want to stay home and focus on making their house a true home. She agreed, finding joy in cooking for her husband, tending a small garden, and getting to know the other women in town. Nathan proved to be everything she could have hoped for in a husband. He was attentive and loving, always making sure she knew how much he cherished her. He helped with the household chores without being asked, something Thomas had never done. He made her laugh every day with his dry sense of humor and the stories he told. And at night, he held her close and made her feel desired and beautiful in a way she never had before. About 4 months after their wedding, Clara realized she was pregnant. She waited a few days to be certain before telling Nathan, wanting to be absolutely sure. When she finally told him one evening after dinner, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. His face lit up with pure joy and he swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to put her down. "We are going to be parents," he said wonderingly, his hand gently resting on her still flat stomach. "Clara, I am going to be a father." "You are going to be a wonderful father," Clara said, covering his hand with her own. "Our child is so lucky to have you." Nathan became even more protective of her during her pregnancy, constantly worrying if she was doing too much or not eating enough. Clara found his concern endearing rather than annoying, a stark contrast to how Thomas had reacted when she had been pregnant before. That pregnancy had ended in miscarriage at 3 months, and Thomas had barely acknowledged it, treating it as an inconvenience rather than the devastating loss Clara had felt it to be. But Nathan was different in every way. He talked to her growing belly every night, telling their unborn child stories about the places he had been and the things he had seen, promising to take their child on adventures when they were older. He rubbed Clara's aching feet without complaint and held her hair back on the mornings when morning sickness struck hard. As her belly grew, Nathan began talking more seriously about their future. He had been saving money carefully, and he shared his dream of buying a small piece of land outside of town where they could build a proper ranch. Nothing huge, just enough land for some cattle and horses, maybe some chickens and a vegetable garden. A place where they could raise their children and build a real legacy. Clara loved the way he said their children, plural, already planning for more babies beyond the one she currently carried. It spoke to his optimism, his certainty that they would have a long and happy life together. After all the uncertainty and fear of her first marriage, Nathan's confidence in their future was like a balm to her soul. One evening in late spring, about 7 months into Clara's pregnancy, Nathan came home with excitement written all over his face. "I found it," he announced, sweeping Clara into a careful embrace. "The perfect piece of land. It is about 3 miles outside of town, up in the hills. There is a natural spring on the property, good grazing land, and the most beautiful view you have ever seen. The owner is willing to sell for a fair price, and I have almost enough saved up." "How much more do you need?" Clara asked, caught up in his enthusiasm. "About $100, Nathan said, his excitement dimming slightly. "It will take me a few more months to save that much. I just hope the property is still available by then." Clara thought for a moment, then went to the small chest where she kept her few precious belongings. She pulled out a small leather pouch and handed it to Nathan. "My mother gave me this when I married Thomas," she said. "It was her emergency money, saved up over years. I never told Thomas about it because I knew he would have gambled it away. It is $65. Combined with what you have saved, it should be enough." Nathan stared at the pouch, then at Clara, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Clara, this is your mother's money. Are you certain?" "I am certain," Clara said firmly. "This is exactly what she would have wanted me to use it for, a real home for my family, our family. Let us buy that land, Nathan. Let us build the life we have been dreaming about." 2 weeks later, they owned 15 acres of beautiful Nevada land with a natural spring and grazing pastures. Nathan threw himself into building them a house, working every spare moment when he was not at his jobs in town. Some of the men he had befriended in Rhyolite came out to help, and slowly but surely, a sturdy two-room cabin began to take shape on their property. They moved in a month before Clara's due date, even though the house was not quite finished. Clara did not care that there were still gaps in the walls that needed chinking or that the floor was rough-hewn wood that would need sanding. It was theirs, built with love and hard work, and it was perfect. Their son was born on a hot July night in 1886, nearly a year after Nathan had paid Clara's debt and changed both their lives forever. The local midwife attended the birth, along with Mrs. Henderson, who had become a good friend to Clara. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Nathan, pacing outside, feared he might lose both his wife and child. But Clara was strong, stronger than she had ever realized, and when the midwife finally placed a squalling, red-faced baby boy in her arms, she felt a rush of love so intense it took her breath away. Nathan was allowed in then, and the look on his face when he saw his son for the first time was something Clara knew she would remember for the rest of her life. "He is perfect," Nathan whispered, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "Clara, he is absolutely perfect." They named him Nicholas Thomas Zeller. The first name was Nathan's choice, wanting his son's name to start with the same letter as his own. The middle name was Clara's suggestion, a small acknowledgement of her late husband while making it clear that this child was part of a new and better chapter of their lives. Nicholas was a healthy, happy baby who quickly became the center of their world. Nathan proved to be every bit as good a father as Clara had known he would be, getting up in the night to help with feedings, changing diapers without complaint, and spending hours just holding his son and talking to him about everything and nothing. In the months after Nicholas's birth, their small ranch began to truly take shape. Nathan bought a few head of cattle with money he had saved, and they began building up a small herd. They got chickens and a milk cow, and Clara's vegetable garden flourished thanks to the natural spring on their property. It was hard work, but it was satisfying in a way that nothing else had ever been. When Nicholas was about 6 months old, Clara discovered she was pregnant again. Nathan was delighted, though he worried about her health after the difficult birth she had experienced with Nicholas. But this pregnancy was easier, and when their daughter was born in the spring of 1887, the birth was faster and less traumatic. They named her Catherine Rose Zeller, and she was the image of her mother with dark hair and blue eyes. Nicholas was fascinated by his baby sister, and Clara often found Nathan sitting with both children in his arms, telling them stories or singing old cowboy songs in his rumbling baritone voice. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm over the next few years. The ranch continued to grow as Nathan worked hard to build up their herd and improve their land. Clara took care of their home and children, finding joy in the simple domestic tasks that had once felt like drudgery. She could hardly believe that this was her life now, so different from the fear and loneliness of her first marriage. When Nicholas was 5 and Catherine was 3, Clara gave birth to another son, whom they named Aaron James Zeller. He was a quiet, contemplative baby, so different from his boisterous older brother and chatty sister. Nathan joked that they now had a full house and maybe they should stop, but Clara could see in his eyes that he loved being a father and would welcome as many children as God saw fit to bless them with. The years passed in a blur of work and love and laughter. Nicholas grew into a strong, curious boy who loved helping his father with the ranch work. Catherine was spirited and creative, always coming up with elaborate games and stories. Aaron remained quiet but thoughtful, the kind of child who noticed everything and rarely missed a detail. In 1891, when Nicholas was 5 years old and already learning to ride, Clara gave birth to twin girls. The pregnancy had been difficult, and she had grown enormously large, but neither she nor Nathan had suspected twins until the midwife delivered the first baby, and then announced there was another one coming. They named the twins Emma Jane and Lily Me, and Nathan walked around in a daze for days, unable to quite believe that he now had 5 children. The house that had seemed perfectly adequate when it was just the 2 of them was now bursting at the seams. That summer, Nathan and Nicholas worked together to build an addition, expanding the cabin into a proper 6-room house with enough space for their growing family. Clara watched them work side by side, her heart full to bursting with love for the life they had built together. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sun set over the desert while their children played in the yard, Nathan took Clara's hand and squeezed it gently. "Do you remember the day we met?" he asked. "When that deputy was arresting you for Thomas's debts?" "I remember every detail," Clara said softly. "I remember thinking my life was over, that I was going to lose everything and end up in jail or worse. And then you stepped out of that crowd like some kind of guardian angel." "I was terrified," Nathan admitted. "I had been watching you for weeks, trying to work up the courage to talk to you. And then when I saw what was happening, I did not even think. I just knew I had to help you." $573, Clara said with a shake of her head. "It still amazes me that you did that for a stranger." "You were never really a stranger," Nathan said, turning to look at her. The setting sun cast golden light across his face, and Clara was struck by how handsome he still was, even with the lines that years of hard work had etched around his eyes. "From the first time I saw you at the boarding house, I felt like I knew you. Like I had been waiting my whole life to find you. Paying that debt was not just about helping someone in trouble. It was about reaching for something I did not even know I needed. A chance at real happiness. A chance at love." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder, watching Nicholas chase the twins around the yard while Catherine tried to show Aaron some game she had invented. "You gave me everything," she said quietly. "A home, children, love. A real life, not just existence. I was so lost before you found me, Nathan. So broken, and you put me back together." "We put each other back together," Nathan corrected gently. "I was just as lost as you were, Clara, just drifting through life without purpose or direction. You gave me a reason to stop running. You gave me something worth staying for." As darkness fell, they called the children inside for supper. The house was loud and chaotic with 5 young voices all talking at once, but Clara would not have changed it for anything. As she served up stew and fresh bread, watching Nathan help the twins wash their hands while Nicholas told some elaborate story about a lizard he had seen, she felt a profound gratitude for the twists of fate that had brought them together. That night, after the children were all in bed and the house was finally quiet, Nathan and Clara lay together in the darkness of their room. "I love you," Nathan whispered, pulling her close. "More today than yesterday and less than I will tomorrow." "I love you too," Clara whispered back. "Thank you for saving me that day. Thank you for giving me this beautiful life." "Thank you for letting me," Nathan replied, kissing her forehead gently. "Thank you for taking a chance on a drifting cowboy with nothing to offer but his heart." Years continued to pass, and their children grew. Nicholas became a skilled rancher, working alongside his father to expand their operation. Catherine developed a talent for drawing and painting, filling the house with sketches of desert landscapes and family scenes. Aaron proved to have a way with animals, able to calm even the most skittish horse or nervous cow. The twins, Emma and Lily, were inseparable and kept everyone entertained with their matching mischief. By 1900, When Nicholas was 14 and the twins were 9, the Zeller Ranch had become one of the most successful operations in the area. They had built up a herd of over 200 head of cattle and had a reputation for breeding quality horses. Nathan had hired on a few ranch hands to help with the work, but he still spent most of his days working alongside his sons, teaching them everything he knew about ranching and life. Clara had become a respected member of the Rhyolite community, known for her kindness and her willingness to help neighbors in need. She often thought about how far she had come from that terrified woman being arrested for debts on a dusty street corner. She had found her strength and her voice, and she used both to make her corner of the world a better place. One afternoon in the spring of 1901, as Clara was hanging laundry and watching the twins play, she saw a young woman walking up the road toward their house. She looked travel-worn and frightened, and something about the way she held herself reminded Clara so much of her younger self that her heart ached. The woman approached hesitantly. "I am so sorry to bother you," she said, her voice shaking. "I am looking for work, any work. I can cook and clean and I am willing to work hard. I just need a chance." Clara studied her for a moment, seeing the desperation in her eyes. "What is your name?" she asked gently. "Sarah," the woman said. "Sarah Bennett. I came out west with my husband, but he died 3 months ago and I have no money and nowhere to go. I have been walking for days." Clara made a decision in that instant, one she knew Nathan would support without question. "We do not need a hired girl," she said, and watched hope die in Sarah's eyes. "But we could always use help with the children and the house, and you look like you could use a good meal and a safe place to stay. How about you come inside, have some supper with us, and we can talk about a more permanent arrangement." That evening, as they all sat around the expanded dinner table with Sarah nervously eating as if she could not quite believe the food was real, Nathan caught Clara's eye across the table and smiled. She knew he was thinking the same thing she was, remembering another time when someone had been desperate and alone, and a stranger had offered unexpected kindness. Sarah stayed with them for several months, helping Clara with the house and children, and slowly regaining her confidence and strength. Eventually, she caught the eye of one of their ranch hands, a good man named Robert who had worked for them for years. Nathan helped them buy a small piece of adjacent land, and they started their own small homestead. It brought Clara deep satisfaction to know they had helped someone the way they had been helped. The years rolled on, bringing changes and challenges, but always an underlying foundation of love and stability. Nicholas married a local girl when he was 21, bringing a daughter-in-law into the family that Clara adored. Catherine shocked them all by announcing she wanted to go to San Francisco to study art, and though it was hard to let her go, Nathan and Clara supported her dream. Aaron stayed on the ranch, content to work with his father and eventually take over the operation someday. The twins married brothers from a neighboring ranch, causing much laughter about keeping things simple at family gatherings. Through it all, Nathan and Clara's love for each other never wavered. They had built something remarkable together from the ashes of Clara's first marriage and Nathan's years of aimless drifting. They had created a family, a legacy, a life worth living. In the summer of 1910, 25 years after Nathan had paid Clara's debt and walked her home, they celebrated their silver wedding anniversary with a big party at the ranch. All their children were there, along with their growing collection of grandchildren. Neighbors and friends from all over the region came to celebrate the couple who had become pillars of their community. As the party wound down and the sun began to set, Nathan and Clara slipped away from the crowd to their favorite spot on the porch, the same place where they had shared so many conversations over the years. Nathan pulled Clara close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, exactly as she had done so many times before. 25 years, Nathan said wonderingly. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I first saw you at the boarding house. Other times it feels like we have been together forever. Both are true, Clara said with a smile. You are still the man who stepped out of that crowd to save me, but you are also the man who has stood beside me through 25 years of joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge. You are my past, my present, and my future. I would do it all again, Nathan said softly. Every moment, every challenge, every joy. You are the best decision I ever made, Clara Zeller. And you are mine, Clara replied, lifting her head to kiss him gently. My savior, my husband, my love. As the stars began to appear in the vast Nevada sky, they sat together in comfortable silence, surrounded by the sounds of their family laughing and talking. 5 children, 8 grandchildren so far, with more surely on the way, a thriving ranch, and a love that had only grown stronger with each passing year. It was more than Clara had ever dreamed possible on that terrible day when she thought she had lost everything. But she had not lost everything. She had found everything. And it had all started with a cowboy who stepped out of the shadows, paid her debt, and walked her home,